I mean, obviously we have a biological relationship, and I'm very fond of him. But if this were anybody on our staff that fell into this category, I'd not feel bad about it.
Well, Max, it has finally happened. The change that many Iowa fans have been hoping for almost years now. It's finally arrived. Brian Ferentz is out as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, Michael, and it only took 8 games into this season to finally figure out that our offense ranks at the bottom of the NCAA in terms of production. It's something that had to be done. It's just interesting right now with the timing of it.
Yeah, it definitely is. Brian will finish out the remainder of this 2023 season. After the bowl game, though, he will no longer be a part of the Iowa football team, and it'll be interesting to see how they close out this season. But hello, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Iowans Weekly Pregame Show and your number one source for Hawkeye sports. I'm Michael Merrick.
And I'm Max Von Griesen. Today, we're going to break down everything that you need to know before the kickoff.
And like we were just talking about, obviously, Brian Ferentz is out as the offensive coordinator after this season, Max.
Yeah, Michael. Yesterday afternoon, Beth Gates released a statement detailing that she had informed Brian Ferentz that he will no longer be returning after this season is over. And let's be frank, it's about time. It's insane to me just how long this actually took to happen. This could have been done at the end of last season, Michael. Now all it does is make Hawkeye fans like myself count down the weeks until we have a new offensive coordinator.
It'll be interesting to see how that will look next season, but with how bad Iowa's offense has performed over the past few years, it is not too shocking at all that BF will be released. What is shocking, though, Max, you touched on it, the timing of this statement. Iowa almost never makes these decisions during the year.
Basically, my philosophy, my practice, I think has been pretty consistent. Typically, we go through the season and then run an evaluation of the program, top to bottom, afterwards. And, yesterday's announcement, certainly a departure from that practice, but that's really what we've tried to do for the past 24 years. This is it's one more of those things that you have to try to compartmentalize and put it in the right position. And then the most important question is, what do we have to do to work forward and, be successful to be successful.
Now, Max, I'm excited to hear who you have for your Hawkeye highlight, but I want to keep it here with the Ferentz family for a second and address something with some certain Iowa fans. After this week's presser, many people online were questioning if Kirk Ferentz would retire following this season due to the dismissal of his son. What surprised me most, though, is that a good portion of fans were basically encouraging Kirk to retire. Let's even take a look at a few tweets. Right here, Chris Hassel, former sound-off intern just like myself, he says that there couldn't be a better time for the Ferentz era to end and that he deserves a statue outside of Kinnick, but his time has come. Let's move on to the next one. Here we have someone saying how Kirk has had a great run, but do Iowa fans really want to pretend that the Ferentz way is going to advance this team forward anymore with the headwinds of competition blowing in? He even tells Jason that all things must come to an end. Let's go to the final tweet. This one here is a poll put out by KXNO Morning Rush. They asked the question, do you want Kirk Ferentz to retire after the season? 56.4% of fans said yes, and that is just absolutely insane to me. Now look, do they bring up fair points? Of course they do. But while change can be this exciting and fun and adventurous thing, it can also be very scary and grim once your new reality set in. We've all seen what's happened to Nebraska over this past decade. They fired Bo Pelini in 2014, despite the fact that he never won less than 9 games during his time there. How'd that pay off for him? Oh, well, they've only had 1 winning season since 2014. They've made 2 bowl games during that time, and they currently hold the longest streak without a bowl game of any Power 5 school. Now, I know they've gotten back on track a little bit with Matt Rule this year, but it's taken them 9 years and 3 different coaches just to get back to a similar spot they were in when they fired Pelini. And I know that every Iowa fan just loves making jokes at the expense of the Cornhuskers because you know they have dysfunction and you know that there's plenty of material. All I'm trying to say is what the great author Aesop once said: be careful what you wish for, lest it come true. And if this wish comes granted for those Hawkeye fans, the tables may turn on the consistently good Iowa football program.
Yeah, Michael, as easy as it is for me to make fun of Nebraska fans, I do not want to be in their shoes at all. I take, what Kirk Ferentz has done in his time here for granted, that's to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to be Nebraska, let's be honest. You've been to that state, I have too, and we're going to go back there later. It's just not really what you want to be.
No, it's not. But Michael, my Hawkeye highlight for this week is going to be starting center Logan Jones. Jones filled some pretty big shoes last year when Tyler Linderbaum got drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, and I'd say that so far he has certainly impressed me. And Michael, I used to play center back in high school. Yeah, that's me. The circle around me, that's me. I was always wearing a do-rag and always had the eye black, and I was certainly the center. But getting back to Logan Jones, he's been tremendous this season for the Hawkeyes. Across the 213 pass blocking snaps that Jones has been in for, he's only allowed 2 sacks. That's incredible, and not only is he good in the pass, but also on the ground for rushing plays too. He has a 70.5 Pro Football Focus run blocking grade, which ranks within the top 20 in the country. Jones is also a nominee for the Remington Trophy, which recognizes the best center in all of college football. I was once a nominee too, but for high school. Now he's only a junior, but I feel like he could have a really bright future in the NFL along with Tyler Linderbaum. Now, for this weekend, I personally don't think Jones and the rest of the Hawkeye offense line will have anything to worry about regarding the Wildcats' defensive line. Northwestern's defense only has 16 sacks on the season, which ranks them 75th in the nation. Obviously, you never want to overlook any opponents, but this week should be a breeze for the Hawkeye offensive line.
Great job, Max. I love seeing you, throw it back to the high school days. I didn't know you were, that big with the eye paint.
Yeah, Michael, playing center isn't the most glamorous of jobs, but let's just say I got to touch the ball every single play.
Hey, that's the most important thing. Great job, Max. But now let's head to the breakdown of these Wildcats, and with the help of Bradley Locker. Northwestern has had Iowa's number in years past, but that was under former head coach Pat Fitzgerald, and obviously he's gone now. Replacing him has been David Braun, who has this Northwestern team in a position that nobody could have expected them in, as they're 4-4 on the year so far.
Right. I mean, nobody really expected this team to win more than 2 or 3 games overall, sitting at 4 wins, 2 in the conference, with 4 games left to go is pretty much a dream situation so far for this Northwestern team. I think the big thing that's been different this year is that this team has been just incredibly resilient after losses and has actually been able to go out and correct some of the mistakes that it's been making.
And this Northwestern team is also on their backup quarterback, as Brendan Sullivan has led the team the past 3 weeks. In his 3 games as a starter, he's played fairly well, putting up 5 total touchdowns and only throwing 1 interception when he starts.
He's definitely a dual threat, and that's something that Iowa is definitely keenly going to be aware of. He led the team with 57 rushing yards. I felt like he needed to kind of run the ball a little bit more this week. He's a pretty dynamic athlete when he gets the ball in his hands. And then finally, it felt like everything came together against Maryland. He was much more composed in the pocket. He took his time, was just really deadly accurate downfield, and he was top 10 in basically every quarterbacking metric for PFF in the Power 5 this week. Easily the best game of his career, and one of the best Northwestern quarterback games we've seen in the last 2 seasons. Maybe
the offensive playmakers that the Hawks are going to have to watch out for this week will most definitely be wideout Bryce Kurtz. Kurtz showed his true talent in that amazing comeback versus Minnesota, where he had 10 catches for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Currently places in the top 5 in yards per game in the Big Ten, and he's closing in on 500 receiving yards on the year, which is way past the entire Iowa wide receiver core.
Kurtz has been for sure one of the most pleasant surprises on the team this year. He came in last year, had I think it was under 230 receiving yards. He did miss some time with an injury, but and you talked about Kurtz, that Minnesota game was basically unguardable. Minnesota kind of knew. I feel like everybody in the stadium knew the ball was going to Kurtz, and he just caught it anyway and kept racing toward the sideline and toward the end zone. And of course, that game, 210 yards, accounts for a big portion of his production, but we've still seen him make that smaller incremental progress.
Now, Northwestern's defense does rank near the bottom in the entire conference, but as the year has gone on, they have continued to take steps up from where they were a season ago.
And I think we've seen a lot of strides on the defensive side of the ball, a much more opportunistic defense for the Wildcats. Takeaways have been a little bit of a struggle, but 4 in the last 2 games, definitely a sign in the right direction. And I think also it's a defense that's gotten off the field better on 3rd down. has not really been gashed for these long drives, these explosive plays that we've been accustomed to for Northwestern the last few years. And I think that's something that Iowa took advantage of last year when the Hawkeyes scored 33 points. I think it's a defense that definitely has found its identity more under David Braun.
Leading the defense is definitely Xander Mueller. Mueller currently leads the team in sacks and is second in tackles. Plus, he's even grabbed an interception just to show how versatile this linebacker is.
Mueller definitely having the standout season of the two. He's been pretty stingy in terms of not missing tackles, but also making plays. I want to say he's over 4 sacks this year, an interception. He's kind of been all over the field for the Wildcats, and when the team has needed stops, he's gotten them.
Yeah, Michael, it's certainly going to be the battle of the backups in the Windy City on Saturday. That's a hot ticket.
No, it definitely is. In Wrigley, it's going to be a great time. You know, Cubs aren't playing there anymore. Obviously, the World Series just ended, but, you know, going to get some great Iowa versus Northwestern football. Couldn't be more excited, but I'm excited to hear what's going on around the rest of the Big Ten. So let's bring in AJ for that. AJ, we'll talk a little bit later about that title and predictions, but before we get there, can you just let us know some of the big matchups this week?
Yeah, guys, we have a ton of big games this weekend. Starting off inside the Big Ten, the 11th ranked Penn State Nittany Lions are traveling to College Park to take on the Maryland Terrapins. Penn State is coming off a dominant victory over Indiana, 33-24, after dropping to now top-ranked Ohio State. Drew Aller threw for over 200 yards and 3 tuds in their victory, but also threw his first pick of the season. On the other side, Taulia Tagovailoa and the Terps are coming off a tough 33-27 loss to Northwestern. Maryland started the season 5-0, but have dropped their last 3. We'll see if they're able to get back on track against the 11th ranked Nittany Lions. The Terrapins are 8.5-point underdogs in this one. Another Big Ten game to keep an eye on is Ohio State at Rutgers. The Buckeyes are the #1 team in the country in the latest college football playoff rankings, jumping Georgia, who has been #1 in the AP polls all season. They're coming off a 14-point victory over the Wisconsin Badgers, whose defense intercepted Kyle McCord not once, but twice, and they still escaped Camp Randall with the victory off a 2-touchdown day from Mr. Future Top 2 pick Marvin Harrison Jr. And the Rutgers defense, however, has been stellar all season long, and they're coming off a bye week after defeating Indiana 31-14 2 weeks ago. Not to mention the Scarlet Knights have won 3 of their last 4 matchups, but are 18.5-point dogs in this one. Now, outside the Big Ten, there are so many games with playoff implications, but the one I'll be watching is number 14 LSU taking on number 8 Alabama down in Tuscaloosa in Bryant-Denny Stadium. The Crimson Tide are coming off a major victory over number 17 Tennessee. After going down big early in the ball game, they came storming back to defeat the Volunteers. But on the other side, Brian Kelly and his LSU Tigers are coming off a game where they absolutely destroyed Army 62-0. Jaden Daniels only played in the first half and went 11 for 15 for 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brian Thomas Jr. had 3 receptions for 122 yards and 2 tuds, and his buddy Malik Neighbors had 4 receptions for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. But they are rolling into Alabama as 3-point dogs in this one. Fellas, that's a look around college football this weekend. What games are you guys most excited for?
Well, AJ, I think you just touched on it there with that Alabama-LSU matchup. SEC football, you know, they say they do it better there in the South. I don't know about all that, but I am excited to see that Crimson Tide versus Tigers matchup.
Yeah, for me, I'm keeping it local. The only game I really care about is the Iowa game. Let's be real here. I am only watching that game.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, Max, we're going to bring the focus back to this game. So, AJ, I'm glad you don't go too far away, so we're going to bring you back. But, Max, I don't know about you. I'm just at a loss for words with this title situation. Not only did Iowa get robbed for a win against Minnesota with that punt return touchdown getting called back, but because of that, AJ once again has the title, and he's yet to get a game wrong this year.
Yeah, well, I got to give credit to AJ, man. I mean, come on. He really knows how to pick really bad football games. And 2 weeks ago, the game was easy for AJ because he's a Minnesota fan. There should be no bias, AJ.
No bias at all. We know that you have a little bit of Gopher in your heart still. But we're going to send it over to you so you can show us how it's done with this prediction.
All right, Max, you got to chill out, bro. Just because I'm from Minnesota doesn't mean I was cheering for the Gophers. I came to the University of Iowa for a reason. The Gophers have been getting beat up by Iowa for a long time. And I just had that feeling last week. I had some of my Minnesota friends come down. They've been talking a lot. I just had the feeling. But anyways, I don't even know what to say at this point. I got a lot of criticism for my pick a couple weeks ago, but I once again have silenced you all with a 5th straight belt victory. But that was 2 weeks ago, so who really cares about that anymore? We've got a big game coming up, and the Hawkeyes are going to be relying on their defense per usual. Brendan Sullivan has been solid since taking the starting job from Ben Bryant after his injury, but I think Cooper DeJean gets some revenge and picks off Sullivan not once, but twice, and makes sure there are no questions in the ref's mind this time. DeJean is my Hawkeye to watch this weekend. Before my game prediction, I've got Iowa getting the victory, 24-13, blowing past that historic over-under of 29.5 and getting their 7th win of the season. Max, what are you thinking about this weekend?
Interesting pick, AJ, but for my Hawkeye to watch, I'm going to stick to my guy that's been flying real high, and that's Sebastian Castro. Castro is tied for 3rd on the team for solo tackles and leads the Hawks in interceptions with 3 on the year. I'm calling right now, AJ, get your notepad and pen ready for this. I'm calling a Sebastian Castro 4th quarter interception late in the game this Saturday. As for the game, guys, this is going to sound like a joke, but it's not. I have the Hawks winning this one 7-3, and per usual, really exciting stuff coming from Wrigley Field. But let's go back out to Evanston to hear what Bradley has for this game.
I think there are several elements of this matchup that are a little concerning for Northwestern. You can look at the offensive line, but to me, I think I'm intrigued to see what Northwestern does at running back. Cam Porter in his senior season has really not been super prolific or effective running back. I think Northwestern, what it might want to do this week is hand over the RB1 duties to Joseph Hyman II. He's pretty much the 2nd most explosive player on the team behind AJ Henning, who is an all-pro returner at Michigan. Why not let your most explosive, 2nd most explosive player on offense touch the ball as much as possible, whether it's in a screen pass, getting the ball on a sweep, anything like that. Just I feel like Hyman needs to touch the ball probably at least 10 to 15 times in this game. And if he has probably 100 yards, if he can get to there, I feel like Northwestern would have a very good chance of winning this one. Because I do think it's actually going to be a pretty good game. It's just going to be a quintessential Big Ten West Iowa Northwestern game, which means some crazy stuff is definitely bound to happen. So, anything can happen when you're playing in a baseball stadium and when you put together 2 of the lowest scoring offenses in the country. But I do have Iowa winning this one 18-15, a very hideous score for a game that probably won't feature a lot of cohesive offensive football. I just don't really know if I can trust Northwestern's offense to go out and fire as nearly as well as it did against Maryland, against a defense like Iowa. I think it's a close game. I think it's a fun game. And I think at long last, these 2 teams are kind of playing for something meaningful in November for the first time in 3 years. But unfortunately, I don't see Northwestern ending its streak, losing 3 straight to Iowa now.
Gotta respect you being a realist about this game, Bradley, and I don't know, I don't want to spoil my pick, but might be a consensus around the board. But we're gonna start with my Hawkeye to watch, and I'm going to a super special player, a special teamer. I'm going with the team's biggest Swiftie, Drew Stevens. That's my Hawkeye to watch this week. And in a game that opened as the lowest over-under total in college football history, it's definitely gonna be one that comes down to the kickers, and Stevens will be the one that strikes the most. He's gonna get a minimum of 2 field goals in this one and lead the way for Iowa to get a wacky West win, 13-6. I think only 1 touchdown is gonna be scored in this one, and it might be the defense that does it. I just think that the Hawkeye defense, though, it's too much for this Northwestern team that gives up the most sacks in the entire Big Ten.
Yeah, Michael, I think your score is pretty close to what it's actually going to be, but I just can't give that much credit to Iowa's offense.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You got the 7-3. It's like a baseball game. It'll be in that baseball stadium, so it'll be a fun one. I don't know if your 7's going to be 2 safeties and a field goal like it was to open up the season a year ago, but it'll definitely be an interesting one. I just think 1 touchdown will have to be scored in this one, but I just want one of us to get that title back from AJ. I'm real sick of it.
No, I can smell the belt. It's genuine leather. I want it, but unfortunately, AJ's got it right now.
Yeah, just for now, though. Hopefully next week it'll be back here where it rightfully belongs. But a big thank you to AJ and to Bradley, and a special thanks to you for tuning in to another edition of Before the Kickoff.
Be sure to check out the Daily Iowans website and YouTube page for all the latest on everything Hawkeye sports. And from the University of Iowa, I'm Max Von Gries.
And I'm Michael Merrick, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend of football, everyone.